Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. I'm Ryan Aber, joined by Jason Kersey, as won't say always, since we're mixing things up a little bit, but most times. And as has become our custom, Kyle Fredrickson, our OSU beat writer. Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Just
You did it
time
again.
out. Time
You
out.
did it
Time out.
again.
Time
You
out.
did it again.
Jason, how are you doing today?
Not great after that.
Oh man, not again.
I stopped myself
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to ask how
Yeah,
you were doing today.
But you had to stop yourself.
Hey, listen. He said hi to me first because I got the short end of the non-conference stick on Saturday, and you guys got the very high end, the better end, in a classic. So he was just being nice because you guys saw some pretty great football on Saturday.
We did. We did,
Yeah,
indeed.
No doubt about that. Let's start with a rewind of Saturday. And Kyle, we'll start with you because I think we'll probably spend more time talking about what we saw
Rightly
last
so,
Saturday.
rightly so.
But you saw Oklahoma State and Central Arkansas, and I've got to be honest. About the only things I know about this game is that the score wasn't nearly as lopsided as I thought it would be heading into the game, and that OSU struggled a little bit to make extra points. What am I missing?
If we're really talking about the main points, I think you hit it on the head. It was a bit of a copy of the opener. Slow start against an underwhelming opponent. Mason Rudolph has to make some plays in the second half to surge ahead. A bit more of a wider margin, which should be expected against an FCS school. But you're right; it's not really the offense that we expected at this point, with Mason Rudolph coming back and the addition of Chris Carson. Mike Gundy's positive as ever, though. I think he still loves the fact that he basically has a kind of an NFL preseason, games that don't matter, easy games to kind of get his guys ready before they hit the conference slate, which is what they really consider, the prime area of when we're going to find out how good this team is. So, another underwhelming performance, though. They're going to have to figure out some of their issues in the run game. Chris Carson only averaged 2.8 yards a carry, which, Gundy says is attributed to how Central Arkansas played defense. But, I don't care how they play defense. It's Central Arkansas. You should be able to put up some better numbers than that. So, a few concerns, but, they got one more left with UTSA here. We'll continue to learn a little bit more about this team. But like I've said on here before, with this non-conference schedule, I don't know that we know a whole lot about this OSU team at all. As to where you guys, with what you saw on Saturday, you probably learned a whole lot more.
Yeah, I think we got a pretty good idea of what OU is in a lot of ways on Saturday, with the way that I thought the number one thing we learned is that Baker Mayfield has a little something in him that maybe we hadn't seen, at least to this point.
He's fun, man. He's fun.
I mean, the escapability, and Jason, you're going to write about this later this week, I believe, just the job he was able to do in keeping plays alive. I know from watching a little bit of the broadcast and going to watch the full game again later today, but they kept showing Trevor Knight and talking about, well, are they going to make a switch? Should they make a switch? And all this stuff, which to me, what I saw on Saturday was absurd. Baker Mayfield was the reason their offense was able to do anything early, and not that they were able to score a lot, but they were at least able to move the ball at times and keep some plays alive when he could have been sacked for a loss of 6 or 7, was able to escape and find a guy downfield, as we saw late in the game on what ended up being the eventual game-tying drive when Sterling Shepard caught a third down pass on the sidelines where Baker skirted out of a tackle, finds Shepard, who makes a diving catch on the field. We saw it time after time Saturday with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, it was really remarkable, and yeah, I don't understand why anybody would have thought that there'd be a quarterback change. It didn't make any sense because even with Baker Mayfield's numbers weren't great in the third quarter. At the end of the third quarter, those things really weren't ever his fault. He made some bad throws, that's true, but most of the time he had receivers dropping passes. He had the offensive line, which can't block anybody. I don't know if either OU or OSU has an offensive line that's worth a darn right now.
Yeah, it's an issue.
So you have and if you're a quarterback, if you have an offensive line that's not blocking anybody, and that obviously means there's no running game, and you have receivers that aren't catching the ball, I'm not sure what else you could do. I don't know how Trevor Knight would have made one bit of difference.
Yeah, I don't think
except he wouldn't have been as good as Baker Mayfield is.
Yeah, I don't think he would have shown the escapability that Mayfield did and the ability to make those throws on the run like Baker Mayfield did on Saturday in Knoxville.
Which is weird because the throws on the run are what we thought Trevor Knight was going to be so good at. It's what he was so good at in the Sugar Bowl, which I think that's we're going to be talking about the Sugar Bowl against Alabama for the rest of our lives, just because not only was it a fun game to cover, exciting, blah, 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 but it's just confounding. I don't get it, and I don't think I ever will. I really don't think I ever will, because I don't think Alabama not being into the game can fully explain it.
No, I mean, there's no way, because
that doesn't have anything to do with Trevor Knight being accurate, which he hasn't been really since. That doesn't have anything to do with accuracy.
Yeah.
Trevor Knight was accurate. He was on the money that night. So weird.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Jason, next topic of conversation, and it's a big one, was what happened with Eric Stryker, both before the game on Tuesday, his comments about the SEC and what is it, blowing gas up there behind, basically. And we'll edit it for family podcasting. Yeah. And then after the game on Saturday, which we weren't, it's weird because when we cover these things, you become aware of things that are going on television and things like that, but you really can't get the full context until much later when you can sort of soak things up. And we saw several videos of Stryker. I think there was one that it looked like he was taunting Tennessee fans, that he was actually going over to the OU section. There's been plenty more of him actually saying stuff to Tennessee fans, and that sort of caused some confusion around the stadium on Saturday night. But what do you make of this whole Eric Stryker and, to a lesser extent, Hatari Bird with the
Bird with the bird.
Bird with the bird. Hatari flipping off the
Sorry, I had to.
The Tennessee fans as he left the field.
It's sort of tough because it's hard for me to get too upset or offended by any of that stuff, because you know what?
Put yourself in that moment.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
19, 20 years old, and all that goes down. Like, I'm sorry, you get a little bit of wiggle room, right?
Exactly. And these are young guys. They're college football players. Bob Stoops said this yesterday. They're expected to be, these violent, angry, play hard, raw kind of guys for 60 minutes or 3 hours or whatever, and then they're supposed to just turn it right off right after the game, right after a hugely emotional double overtime win, in which they came all the way back. I'm sure those Tennessee fans weren't all just saying, "Hey, good game, Eric. Good game,
there's
man."
No chance in the world.
And so Eric Stryker said some things he shouldn't have said, and also he'd become public enemy number one in SEC country. He'd gotten all this stuff, all this criticism because of the things that he said. So naturally, he felt vindicated, I'm sure, in that moment.
Yeah,
and so he got excited and said some things he shouldn't have said. I think it's fine that he apologized, but I also don't think it's a big deal. I just don't. And maybe that makes me.
I mean, well, hey, there's been much worse like player fan things happen. Even in our state, you look at what happened with Marcus Smart. So, I mean, let's not put this in that category. Now, as much as Bob Stoops can say, hey, let boys be boys, I can guarantee he also said, don't flip the bird at fans after a game, no matter the situation. But it's not something that I think needs to be like reprimanded or looked at necessarily in that light.
Yeah, I think Hatari Bird has got to be smart enough to know that, if he does something like that, it's going to be caught on camera. It's going to be a big deal. And so I was fine with him apologizing and with there being at least some, we'll talk to him from Bob Stoops and the rest of the Sooners coaching staff. But I've got a hard time figuring anything wrong with what Stryker said. I mean, yes, he used some language that, isn't great to have broadcast. But here's the deal. I watched the ESPN broadcast. I didn't see any of that. It was, I believe, a video from, I don't know if it was a local Knoxville, Tennessee TV person or something like that. I got a hard time getting too worked up. I mean, it's not like we don't know that Stryker uses those words. We heard some of the language he used during his was it a Snapchat video after the SAE thing. And here's the deal. There's a lot of college kids who use language like that. There's a lot of adults who use language like that.
Yep. I think there's a couple of them in this room.
Yeah,
possible.
I'll be honest. In the right situations, I use language like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but
it's just not a big deal.
Just
It's
the
just not a big
way
deal.
that-
Did your guys' moms ever do like the bar of soap in the mouth thing? Did you ever?
My brother got that a lot more than me. I was smarter about it
Yeah.
when I use language like that. Kevin, my brother Kevin, he actually...
We need to have Kevin Kersey on a
man.
podcast. Although, well, I don't know. We might have to have the drop button.
Kevin, when he was a kid, getting totally off topic here,
Just quickly.
he became almost like a connoisseur of the different soap flavors. I'm not kidding. Like
That's big time.
Sort of like Ralphie and
but
Christmas Story.
But it wasn't the bar of soap. My mom would like get the liquid soap and like rub it on his tongue. It's pretty bad.
Oh,
She might be arrested for that today. I don't know.
I will say to this day, will not use any kind of language like that around my mother.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
You can say it occasionally around my dad, around even my stepdad, but mom, it's off limits like that. And I know there's a lot of people who, their family dynamic's a little bit different, but that's just not what mine's like, and I wouldn't do that. But again, it's just hard for me to get too worked up about it.
Right.
There wasn't anything. He didn't specifically call out a specific fan saying, all this stuff. I guarantee you that virtually none of the Tennessee fans actually heard it because of the noise in that environment. He was standing in the end zone, and there's a good amount of room between the end zone and the stadium front there in Knoxville. So I didn't have any problem with him apologizing last night, which he released his apology on OU's Twitter because he doesn't have his own Twitter. I didn't have any big problem with that, but I've had people on Twitter said he's classless, all this stuff. I actually have a bigger problem with Butch Jones doing what he did and coming up to Eric Stryker and saying those things. Supposedly, what Stryker said is what exactly was it he said, Jason? You were...
He apparently told... excuse me. He apparently, according to Stryker, said, "You're a hell of a player, but have some damn class." And I'm with you. I don't think that was okay. I think that was something that, if Butch Jones had a problem with the way that Eric Stryker was acting or with something that he had said earlier in the week, whatever, that needed to be addressed with Bob Stoops and let Bob Stoops handle it, because it's not really any of Butch Jones' business, I don't think. I don't think Butch Jones would appreciate Bob Stoops doing that to one of his players. Bob Stoops, I asked him about that yesterday at the press conference, and he wouldn't go there. He wasn't, he didn't want to ignite, I don't think, any sort of controversy between him and Butch Jones. But he did say that he's never done anything like that before, which tells me Bob probably wasn't real happy about it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, you guys referenced the atmosphere on the sideline during that, how it was so loud. I think that brings up an interesting topic. When I looked back at this Tennessee game, a little bit of shades of Bedlam from last year, just in the quick turnaround. You go in with a few minutes left thinking you're writing one thing and you're writing something else. Just, for me, what I'd love to know from you guys is, what was it like down there in those last few minutes? Were you on the field when it happened, and how does it maybe compare to that night in Norman just a few months ago?
Yeah, it was very similar because, well, it was a little bit different for us because, we're covering OU, and in that case, we walked down in Bedlam. We walked down from the press box thinking about our OU's going to win angles, and we had, everything planned out, what we're going to write about, what Jason was going to write about, what I was going to write about, what Barry Tram was going to write about, had everything figured out. That changed in the end zone, and you sort of have this conversation as quickly as you can in the craziness of the moment for us, standing in the back of the end zone about, okay, now we got to figure this out, and we got to figure this out quick before we have to go to talk to people, and while also paying attention to all the madness that's going on around us,
right?
Whether it's on the field, the environment, all that stuff, and this time was exactly the opposite, obviously, where we're coming down thinking, well, OU's going to lose this game. what are the angles we're going to pursue. The defense and how it just wasn't quite enough. The performance that they had, the offense could never quite get that spark to get going. And then all of a sudden everything turns on its head, and you've got Sterling Shepard being just a fantastic little stretch of plays. Shepard caught his touchdown pass in the end zone that we were standing behind. Jason and I were right around the goalpost line, I think, Jason, right?
Yeah.
When that happened. So we had to sort of crane our necks up to see, look on the video board behind us and see the replay and make sure that his feet are in and it's going to be upheld as a touchdown. And also the environment's different because the Bedlam game last year was at home for OU, so you had the environment's really similar, really.
Just how loud they were and how crazy they were.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, how loud? Although
maybe this is a different level.
We'll get to the loudness in just a minute because I think that's a good discussion as well. But sort of the wind being taken out of the stadium at the same time. I mean, when Sterling Shepard catches that touchdown, for me. It was the same feeling I had as when Tyreek Hill returned that the punt for a score last year. It was, okay, OU's going to win this game. It's just how are they going to do it? Last year, Tyreek Hill, okay, OSU's going to win this game. It's how are they going to do it? There was an air of inevitability that sort of comes along with those big game-changing moments.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you covered it pretty well. But, for me, when we were walking down in Knoxville, I think there was I had a pretty good idea that I thought Tennessee was still going to win, but there was at least a possibility that OU would come back. So at least those thoughts were sort of in my head, at least. In the case of Bedlam, I didn't think there was any way OSU was going to win. When we left the press box, OU was winning by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it was much crazier.
When we left the press box in Knoxville, OU was down 17-10, and they had started moving the ball. Tennessee hadn't done anything on offense since the second quarter, so there was at least like, okay, well maybe OU can win. But in that Bedlam game, there was not a chance OU would lose that game until we wrap around the corner and Ryan and I, and we see Brandon Shepard wide open catching a touchdown. To bring it 35-28, and then we get down to the field, and Mason Rudolph throws the interception to Sanchez, and it's like, okay, well, that's it.
Right.
I mean, there was no way.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we have and we could talk about that game forever. I think,
but I mean, just in comparing them, I mean, I think that made it different, and but in terms of the crowd noise, Tennessee is an unbelievable place, and everybody should watch a game there at some point in their life, especially a good game like that.
Yeah, it was amazing being on the field, and especially that timeout right before OU's the game-tying touchdown. I think it was a play before the game-tying touchdown. I think that's right. Just the energy building in that stadium toward this moment that we knew was going to come. It was going to be the defining moment of the game. And just an unreal. I mean, you can feel the noise in that environment. I mean, it pounds in your head. It's very palpable, and that's something that I've only seen a few times. I mean, you see it at OU when they get cranked up for a big game, but also that stadium doesn't necessarily hold noise extremely well like a true bowl does. Up until Saturday, the loudest environment I've ever been into was 2002. OU went to Kyle Field in College Station.
Oh yeah,
and played Texas A&M, and that was the Reggie McNeil game where he comes out of nowhere to have this fantastic game, knocks off, I believe it's a third-ranked OU. Does that sound right? Second or third-ranked team. Huge upset in that place. I mean, it sounded like. A jetliner was taken off in your ears.
Right.
It was unreal, and I hadn't experienced anything like that since until Saturday night at the end of the game in Knoxville.
Yeah, well, all you're doing is just making me jealous. Like I said in the opener, you guys got such a great game. When that Tennessee game was going on, we're up in the press box at Boone Pickens watching on our laptops, the live stream on ESPN.
And you hear that like muted
Right.
groans or
Right, just
cheers or just
those
the
guttural reactions that you can,
Yeah.
even in a press box, you can't really hold back. And it's just, it's funny. We're trying to watch that game, and obviously Twitter is updating us before the feed, and so that's frustrating. And you're watching a game where OSU was up 20 and Ben Grogan's missing extra points, and it's just like you're in very opposite worlds at that point. But yeah, I mean that's the type of environment. That you definitely find in the SEC. I think in the Big 12, you get a few, Bedlam last year was loud. There's, Texas, if they ever get back to where they could or should be, that's a whole other topic. That place is going to get loud. But yeah, I mean, some of those environments they have are just unbelievable.
And go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say, speaking of opposite environments, and my experience with that was actually I was covering an OSU game, and there was an OU game going on. This was 2011. I was helping out with OSU, and OU was playing in Tallahassee. They were playing Florida State, and that was a top 5 game at the time, and everybody was all fired up about that, and we were trying to keep track of that in the press box. I was in Tulsa covering a OSU Tulsa game that didn't kick off until 12:15 a.m.
Hey, I was in that press box.
Well, I didn't even know you at the time.
I know, it's crazy, right?
But that's where I was, like, trying to sort of keep tabs and figure out what was going on in Tallahassee. So that's sort of but see, at least you had a game to watch. I was just sort of sitting there.
No, that's a good point. That's
praying that this rain will stop.
That's a good point. And if we want to just touch on a little bit of OSU conversation, I kind of breezed through it in the beginning, but there are some concerns on this team. You mentioned Grogan's missed extra points. For a junior kicker with 2 years of starting experience to have low trajectory on 2 extra points. In the non-conference play, and especially the schedule OSU has, I think this is when we can kind of nitpick the issues that they have. And this is a big one because if they don't, we've seen in the past how crucial those field goals can be, R.E. Michael Honeycutt and Bedlam. You got to have a guy who's consistent. If you don't, you're going to lose close ball games because of it. And when you're a good team that loses close games, that is, kind of drops you to that second echelon. You're not going to be a playoff team. You're not going to be a conference contender unless you can make those big plays in those big moments. So a concern, and it's just so odd that OU has a freshman kid who's doing it all and has been spectacular so far. It's quite the contrast between the two teams right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, you think of usually it's OSU who's really steady in the kicking game and everything, and OU has had all kinds of problems with guys that it seems like you think, oh, they're solved, and then all of a sudden everything crumbles. And if you're an OU fan, you obviously hope this doesn't happen with Austin Seibert, who just looks phenomenal right now. But I mean, we saw Michael Honeycutt last year had this fantastic start, and then all of a sudden when one thing went wrong, 30 things went wrong.
Right, and it's so mental. It's so mental.
Yeah, it's just like the house of cards just collapsed. We saw it with Jimmy Stevens a little bit. We've seen it over and over and over with kickers, and you do have to be really worried about that if you're Oklahoma State, because that can make such a big difference when you're fighting at the top of a conference, when you're fighting for whether it's the first or second spot or the third and fourth spot. There's going to be so many battles, especially late in the season, that last 3 weeks, month of the season, that that's something that they've got to get figured out and have to get figured out fast.
Well, the thing about kickers, I think that is sometimes easy to forget is, these are guys that it is such a mental thing to do, but then you also add in the fact, so a quarterback throws an interception, he's going to get to throw 30 more passes before the game's over. Running back fumbles, he's going to get back out there and he's going to get a few more carries. Receiver, same thing. They're going to be on the field with opportunities to do things. Cornerback gets burned, he's going back out there. A kicker is on the field, a field goal kicker who kicks extra points is on the field 6-7 times probably at most during a game. And so when you have so few opportunities, it's a whole lot easier to be standing on the sideline thinking about what just went wrong, and you have to sit there and think about it until you get another chance to go out there. And it could be 10 minutes before 10 game minutes before you get back out there.
Yeah, it's something that's unique to that position than any other spot on the football field. That there's an element of control that you sort of have to relinquish when you're a kicker.
Right.
At least with when you're the quarterback, there's an offensive series coming up at some point before too long. If you're on defense, your offense can only stay out there for so long. The kicking situations have to be created, and there's nothing you can do to create them yourself. It's just a different deal. So it'll be interesting to watch how Ben Grogan does, especially as they've got games that they should win here coming up. But that'll be probably, in my mind, it's the number one thing to look out for, along with how their running game develops, how their offense.
Right. I mean, Rudolph has been solid. I mean, I know there's some concerns about some overthrows, and I've done a little bit of film study, but they're in good shape. But as we move ahead, one more non-conference game for both these schools. Are you guys pretty excited about that? Are you as excited as I am, or did Tennessee kind of wear you out, where you're like, Tulsa, I can do Tulsa?
I'll be honest with you. This couple days has been pretty. There hadn't been much time for recovery. And there's been a lot of recovery needed. With Barry Trammell and I went straight from Neyland Stadium to the airport for a 6 a.m. flight on Sunday morning, and we're back in Oklahoma City by he was back by about 9:15. I was back at about 9:55, and it takes it out of you. And I love doing what I'm doing. I'm not complaining at all.
Right, but no, it's true.
It's just it does. But college football never stops during the season, and we're right back after it. And I'll be able to rest hopefully sometime a little bit later this week and get keyed up for OU Tulsa. And then a week later, OU gets Big 12 play rolling.
Actually, a week later, OU's off.
Oh yeah, OU's off. See, I'm out of it.
We'll get a little time.
Yeah,
just pound a Red Bull, bro.
Oh no.
Yeah,
sponsored by Red Bull. That's what we need to do.
Yeah,
ooh, we need to get Red Bull to sponsor this podcast.
Red Bull, if you're listening, one of your most loyal customers is
right here,
just dying to
Jason,
have you on board.
Would you like to share how you acquire Red Bull?
Well, I guess I have to now.
No, you can say no. Jason, if you want to say no, you can say no.
No, I will not say no. I subscribe to Red Bull on Amazon.com, and I'm not going to say how many Red Bulls sent to my home once a month.
But hey, if you're all in on Red Bull and you either need or want that to function, it's brilliant to subscribe to it. I mean, you don't have to worry about going to Sam's Club. You don't have to worry about going to the store, finding it at the store, and making sure it's in stock. You don't have to worry about getting out and driving to get it.
Yeah,
it's there.
But I think the larger point here is that it has nothing to do with Red Bull. Amazon.com is awesome because you can subscribe to all these different things. Like I just subscribed to dog food for my dog once a month.
Okay, well,
so I don't have
special shout out to Buster.
Well, yeah, obviously, I didn't bring that up so we could get into a dog conversation. My point is that's something that I buy every month. That now I don't have to. I don't have to go to the store and get it. Now it's just going to come right to my door, and you can do that with tons of things.
Hey, you know what that's great for? Newspapers. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Boom.
Mic drop. Was that good?
So I think that we need to talk to Red Bull and Amazon.com about podcast sponsorships. So let's get on that, guys.
Yeah, we need to get on that. Now, I will say, and I was going to say this before we got on the subscription talk, unfortunately, you told me to pound some Red Bulls. I don't drink caffeine, so that's a bit of an issue, and which has made the last few days significantly more challenging for me to get through, but I'm doing it.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry.
It's the reality of things. So. Trust me, I miss it at times.
Oh gosh,
you're more healthy probably than I am in some ways, but hey, I applaud you. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, well,
so
I can't blame you for that. Hey, it helps you function. You love your Red Bull. Nothing wrong with that. I certainly. It's still the thing that gets me is walking by a coffee shop because I still crave coffee at times, and I can get decaf at times, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I've never had decaf before. I don't even know what the point is. Like, what's the point of decaf?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not the same. So
it's like non-alcoholic beer. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, that really doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, and I'm a guy who doesn't mind the taste of beer. I like beer, but I mean that's. The point of it is to drink beer.
I don't know. I don't know how we got off on this part.
We get off on all these wild tangents, but anyway, really quick to touch on this week. Jason, what's your key to OU Tulsa?
Well, I mean, I think there's two things that to really watch for in this game. Obviously, I'm pretty sure we all know what the outcome of that game is going to be, but I'm interested to see if OU's offense can get off to a faster start. They've struggled with that both against Akron and against Tennessee. It's a little bit more forgivable with Tennessee than with Akron, so I'm interested to see how they start the game, if they are able to come out quicker. And secondly, I'm interested to see how the DBs handle this offense. I mean, obviously they've got the talent edge, but Philip Montgomery, as Baylor's offensive coordinator, has tormented OU for the last 2 seasons with that offense, that style of offense. And now he's head coach at Tulsa. He's doing some good things there, so I'll be interested to see how the DBs handle it.
Yeah, and that's the number one thing I'm looking forward to is how the DBs handle, especially those 2 big receivers from Tulsa. We thought Tennessee would challenge the DBs a little bit. They didn't. So I think this is when we start figuring out, is it really the DBs that are that much better, or have they just not faced very good passing offenses? Kyle, what about you with the Oklahoma State UTSA game?
Yeah, it's another kind of bipolar UTSA team. They hang with Arizona, I think only losing by 10 points.
And a lot of people picked them to beat K-State.
Oh yeah,
last week.
I know Barry did, and his predictions is one of his upset specials in the Big 12. And then they go, they hang with Kansas State, I think, but the final score is something like 30-3. So I don't know. It's another game for OSU to work on the base of its offense. UTSA has an NFL caliber tight end that could pose some issues for OSU in this defense. Defensively they've been very solid, but just 1 forced turnover to this point. That'll be something I'll be writing about this week. It's not where they want to be, and historically this is an OSU team that when it is reaching national prominence, it's a team that forces a lot of turnovers. So I'd like to see them, turn the corner there and force a fumble, get another pick, kind of show us what they're made of in that regard. But this is also another chance to see if they can't get a fast start. It seems like this Yursich offense over the past 2 seasons plagued by slow starts. So another chance against a lower division opponent to show that they have the pieces in place to get out of the gate and go fast. Because if they do, this game shouldn't be close. If they don't, UTSA just feels like the type of team that can hang around, and as we've seen across the country with some of these crazy upsets, all it kind of takes is for that team to be in there in the third quarter, something weird happens, and your national title hopes go down the drain if you lose a game sometimes. So certainly that's going to be imperative for OSU if they want to head into that next week against Texas on the road with a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, so maybe not the most competitive weekend of college football in the state, but certainly one where there'll be a lot of things to look out for and a lot of interesting angles to see in both these games. Kyle, remind me, what time is the Oklahoma State UTSA game on Saturday?
2:30 at
2:30 at Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater. Oklahoma is hosting Tulsa at 11 a.m. on Saturday in Norman. Bright and early start for the Sooners. Should be an interesting one. You can check out newsok.com all week and the Oklahoman every morning for the best OU and OSU coverage anywhere.